I've said to you a few times over the years that when Martin Lewis, the money-saving expert, loses his rag, which happens very, very rarely, then the rest of us should really take notice. I see him as the sort of king canary in the coal mine of economic difficulties, and particularly with reference to energy prices. He was warning a while ago that things were going to get particularly horrible. It's fair to say he's been borne out on that. So, to that end, when he took to Twitter earlier to apologise to Ofgem staff for losing his rag in a background briefing, which he didn't have to do, of course, because only they would have known of it, but that's the mark of how honourable the man is, I thought it was probably another moment where we should catch up with him and find out. I mean, the key phrase that has excited your ire, Martin, is market stabilisation. And you suggested an hour ago that when you've had a chance to do further analysis, you may have to apologise again as you've got it very wrong, which doesn't happen very often. Have you?
What I actually said, James, is I hope I have to apologise again because I've got it very wrong.
Yes.
I'm not sure that apology will be coming. I lost my temper today. I said they were a something disgrace selling consumers down the river. And that was because I sat in a meeting getting a background briefing, which I shouldn't talk about normally, but these are unprecedented times.
Sure.
And just item after item of the changes that were being made were just absolutely kowtowing to the lobbying of the industry, and every mitigating factor I and other campaign groups, consumer campaign groups, had put in had been simply ignored. We're going to have the price cap moving every 3 months. It's called a statutory consultation now, by the way, so it's not a done deal, but a statutory consultation means that it's a tick box exercise. It's a done deal in reality. So we're going to have the price cap move every 3 months, which is what the industry wanted, so they don't have to be stuck on high prices, giving people artificially too cheap for too long. This is a price cap. If prices come down, of course, energy companies could bring their prices lower than the cap, but they won't do so. So this is a form of protecting the industry. I had pushed to try and mitigate that for it to be every 4 months. That had been rejected. The way it's structured means that even though the assessment period is meant to be every 3 months, for the first time they bring this in October, they will be looking back 6 months, which in the first 3 months of that 6 months includes the historic highs of wholesale prices, which is all it's based on. And that will be factored in to protect the industry. So I was starting to ramp up in the meeting, getting very frustrated that everything that seemed to have been pro-consumer was ignored. And then we get to the market stabilisation charge. Now, what the proposal for this charge was, that we vehemently objected to at the time, is if wholesale prices drop by more than 30%, if you were to switch to a new firm away from a price cap, so these aren't people who've agreed to lock in, these are absolutely everybody on the market, the new firm would have to pay the old supplier 75% of the hedging difference. Now, that was pretty bad. But then today they announced they're changing it. And I thought, good. It's no longer it has to be 30% below. It now only has to be 10% below for this to kick into effect. It's no longer they have to give them 75% of the difference. They have to give them 85% of the difference, pretty much all of it. And this was to prevent consumers from the effects of harmful competition. By harmful competition, they mean cheaper prices. To prevent consumers suffering from the ill effects of having cheaper prices. What that announcement does is effectively curtail any hope that if wholesale prices drop, firms will be able to offer cheaper deals for consumers who are able to switch. I was absolutely flabbergasted to hear this in the meeting. Not only that they had ignored our pleas not to do it at all, but they had actually listened to the industry's pleas to make it much more strict. And this has an effect of entrenching the big monopoly suppliers who now dominate the market into their position, killing off any form of competition. Now, look, there's two ways to run an energy market. You either embrace competition or you nationalise or you regulate prices. I'm pretty agnostic as to which way we do it.
Right.
But if we're going to try and have a system as we do, which is based on competition, we've just had our regulator, who's charged with helping consumers and competition, effectively kibosh any hope of cheaper prices. What they haven't done is look at the standing charge that they've inflated. That means people who try and cut their bills by reducing usage only have a minimal effect. They haven't lowered the prepay customers, the poorest in the country, their price cap to be the same as everyone else. They haven't lowered the charges for those who pay by monthly bills, which are the most expensive and include many elderly people, to be the same as direct debit. It is an absolutely flabbergasting. Now, I was wrong to swear at them in a meeting and to call them a disgrace, because that was unprofessional when talking with individuals. But institutionally, it is a disgrace. They are selling consumers down the river. And I call on the politicians of all parties, do not let the regulator do this. Your regulator, charged with protecting consumers, is instituting policies in the middle of a cost of living crisis where people may well die because they cannot afford to pay their bills, that effectively restrict competition and keep prices artificially high when it is unnecessary to do so. And that cannot be right. And that is the reason I lost my rag this morning. I have more reading to do, but that is my initial reading of the situation.
When you're in high dudgeon like this, I'm reluctant to pick it. So what about my understanding of when energy firms started going under was partly because the smaller firms had been offering the lower prices and locked in, and then they couldn't be sustained. So would that be part of the reasoning, if there is any reasoning in Ofgem's position?
Yes, that's absolutely their reasoning.
Gosh.
And their reason is to protect people from firms going bust.
Right.
Now, when I first raised this, I think it was 2018, I have the documentary proof in a meeting and said the biggest problem is you're letting one man and his dog set up an energy firm with no financial checks, no customer service checks, no fit and proper person checks, as would happen in all businesses. They did start to put them in, but they were nowhere near rigid enough. My problem is they've gone for a solution that says effectively let's stop competition instead of in a competitive marketplace. I mean, that's the ideology, not my ideology. That's the one they work in, saying what we actually have to do is make sure that any new businesses that come in have a sound business plan, appropriate finances, enough customer service resources, and are run by fit and proper people. And that needs to be done with a high level of rigidity. But right now, we're in a desperate situation, and it seems perverse to me that the way we are trying to protect customers from firms going bust is locking people into the big six and not allowing new entrants. The market is broken. We are meant to have a market-based solution.
I understand.
The market is broken, and the regulator is entrenching the problems.
Because you can have regulation and competition. It's not a zero-sum game, and they've gone from having no regulation to having no competition instead of trying to actually keep both plates spinning or have a system in which reputable companies with proven provenance can come into the market and allow consumers to take advantage of decreases in wholesale energy prices. That door has been, so me as a punter, my freedom to move my custom in pursuit of cheaper prices when the price that the energy company is paying for the energy before passing it on to me, that freedom has been taken away from me.
Effectively. I mean, I would be very surprised if a firm wanted to offer a tariff when it has to give 85% of the hedging difference to the other supplier. You're having to. It makes it very, very expensive to be able to launch a new deal. And so, I mean, let's just go to a basic summary of the situation. What we have is privatized energy firms in this country, but we effectively now have restricted competition and regulated prices in the form of a price cap. What is the benefit of privatization if you work in that marketplace? You know, there's an argument for having nationalized energy firms that we run it that way. There's an argument for having market competition firms where we run it and we have differentials and they compete to offer the best deal. What we now have is somewhere between the two. We have gloriously, in the middle of a cost of living crisis, managed to provide the worst of both sides.
Well, listen, it's no consolation to you, but your articulacy, as ever, will help an awful lot of people understand it. Look, finally, I don't know whether anyone's said this to you before, but when I talked to Fergal Sharkey about the water companies pumping sewage into rivers and behaving abominably, he sometimes points out to me that the water companies have epic legal and lobbying operations in place, exerting pressure, he would suggest, on Ofwat. Is that part of the problem here, do you think? Do you think that Ofgem is simply having too many lunches with representations of the energy industry. I don't understand how anybody could look at this sector and think, I'm going to listen to him and I'm not going to listen to Martin Lewis. So why do you think that's happening?
I actually don't believe this is nefarious.
No, it's not nefarious, but almost.
Listen, I've always had until today a very good relationship with Ofgem. I've met them in meetings and I felt I've been listened to.
Right.
Although I'm not sure that they've always acted based on what they're listening. And they don't need to. My suspicion is what's happened here is the government is smarting from the enormous bills it's had to pay from firms going bust. Now, we all pay for firms that have gone bust. But in the firms of one of the reasons our bills are higher and our standing charges ridiculously have been increased. I mean, here we are trying to have a greener world. And what have we done? We've lobbied most of the cost on energy on having the fact that you've got an energy supply as opposed to how much you use. Yeah. Surely you should do it on how much you use, not on the fact that you've got an energy supply. But that's the sideline. But I think what's happened here is the government has an enormous bill because of bulb. Now, Bulb was the biggest supplier that went bust. It was too big for any firm to take over its customers. So it had to go into special administration, which is like a normal administration, but they're also one of the administrator's charges is looking after customers. And that is costing the government billions.
Right.
My suspicion is what's happened here is pressure has been put on to say we must not get in a situation like that again. And so all of the policies that are being put in place are trying to restrict future government liability. I don't think we've done it the right way, and I think we're doing it at the cost of consumers.
It's panic measure, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, it is a short-term measure, the market stabilization. We don't know how long the short term is. I don't see this getting cheaper much more quickly. We'll have to look at the new predictions for the price cap. Now it's going to move in October and January and April and whenever the next one after that is, whatever 3 months after that is. But I mean, certainly prices are going to go up substantially in October. Probably £600 on a typical bill. I suspect they'll be roughly stable the following January, and they will drop next April, but they will still be higher than they are now next April. So, I mean, and the whole of the Chancellor's plan to, the £200 loan, not loan, was thinking it'd get cheaper next April. Yeah. Well, it'll be cheaper than it will be in October, but it'll be more expensive than now, and then they're going to add other costs on top of bills. I mean, I'm moderating my language from this morning. It is a disaster that is selling consumers down the river.
Martin, it almost feels inappropriate to say thank you, but thank you.
Anyway, I will finish by saying, I often say, in these times of high stress, when you're talking to people at energy companies and their customer service staff, we must always be polite. And I broke that rule when I spoke to the staff of Ofgem today. And I am generally, this isn't a political point. No. I was wrong to do that. I am sorry. That is not setting a good example. I have written a formal apology to them. I'll be making a donation to National Energy Action as reparations, and losing our rag is not the right thing to do, and I feel slightly ashamed of myself. Worth saying that when I'm here too.
I believe the technical term, Martin Lewis, you are a mensch.
Thank you. Don't feel it today.
But you are. Look after yourself. Martin Lewis there, expressing, I think, a clear intellectual and emotional opposition to the measures taken today by the energy regulator to address just one element of the cost of living crisis. Of course, if you are struggling to pay your energy bills, you could always just go out and get a better paid job.